Test 1, 2, and mic test 1, 2. Let's go ahead and figure out if this sounds okay. Hello, this is Kristen from terraonthebench.com. I would like to share and talk about some things today. Now, daylight savings recently, to me, it has been reoccurring in conversation. And right now, Trump and everybody is trying to figure out if we even need daylight savings anymore. Should it be canceled? Someone brought up a point about it to me regarding wildlife. I don't believe wildlife will be impacted by daylight savings if it were canceled, because there's no concept of time for animals in that way. For example, animals don't know like rush hour for humans. Like, they don't have a rush hour. Okay, they're not getting off of work or anything. We love our animals, we love our wildlife, and they just don't have a concept of time in that respect. Okay, but for humans, oh, it definitely does. People's sleep is off. You get jet lagged from not even flying a plane, and it's just a mess. Okay, so, and one of those things we're going to talk about for the very first show, we'll call this episode 1, is daylight savings, because recently it has been part of the discussion. Before we even talk about that, though, I would like us to even understand where did daylight savings come from? Why do we have it? And how does it affect people? And this video right here, this video actually came out. Let's see when this video came out. This video came out 2 years ago. And on the news, not too long ago, maybe like last month, we started hearing about how, Trump is trying to cancel daylight savings altogether. Hey, I'm for that, only because I like to have proper sleep regimens. I like to have a connection. I like to have a pattern. I like to be able to sleep, right, without, it being disrupted by adding an hour, taking away an hour. It just messes up my entire sleep. And I'm sure that happens and is the case for a lot of people. So let's go ahead and watch this video and see a context. Let's see a context for the discussion so we can better understand what we're working with here.
This weekend, nearly all of us will set our clocks back 1 hour as part of the twice-a-year ritual of alternating between daylight saving time and standard time. But as William Brangham reports, there's a movement underway to do away with this process once and for all.
Like almost all of us in the country, Scott Yates is about to set his clocks back 1 hour, as we do every fall when the nation falls back to standard time. But Yates, like a growing number of Americans, is sick of it.
If somebody snuck into your house and changed your alarm clock so it went off an hour earlier than your body was expecting, you would be so mad.
Absolutely.
And yet the government doesn't. Every year, we're also sleep deprived. We don't really know how to respond.
In every state except Arizona and Hawaii, clocks spring forward in early March to start daylight saving time and fall back in early November to begin standard time. A few years ago, Yates' wife said, "Stop complaining about it."
So in my videos, I plan on talking about topics that are relevant to the environmental field, conservation, sustainability, social issues, things like that. And I like to bring about a discussion because I like a nice talk. I like when people share their ideas and their opinions about things, especially having to do in this field, because this is like a passion of mine, environmental topics. Like I said, I have a master's in environmental studies and sustainability. So that's like a thing that I love, right? So in these videos that we watch, I just want to talk about them. I want us to be able to learn with each other as we watch these videos and be able to distinguish between truth and fiction, as well as things that we hear every day that might not be true. So we're going to work together to make sure that what we're reading and watching are accurate and are not biased, because that does not bring about solutions to issues that we have about the environment or climate change, social injustices, and things like that. So in our process, when we're reading or not reading, but when we're watching these videos, we should be able to, not be biased, but also distinguish between what is real, what is backed by truth and not by emotion, and Yeah. And then from there, not only that, let's just enjoy what we're watching. Let's enjoy what we're talking about and just like talk with each other, right? Okay, great.
Do something. So we started a blog, compiling various studies and reports about why we change our clocks, what the economic impacts are, even some pretty striking evidence that this back and forth switching can harm people's health.
You can compare what's the heart attack data on the Monday after the spring forward time change in places that do have the change and then places that don't have the change, like Arizona. And they don't have a spike in heart attacks on that Monday morning after in Arizona, and they do everywhere else. And so it becomes really pretty clear evidence.
And the thing about Arizona too, I was born in Arizona. I lived there since I was 6 years old, right? But the thing I know too is Arizona's always hot. It's mostly sunny all the time. Yes, daylight savings, it does remove an hour of sunlight, but it's also like Arizona's a little special anyway. Because by the time you get out after work, you might not even want to go outside anyway, because it's so hot. So in my head, I'm like, okay, they might be.
Don't have a spike in heart attacks on that Monday. Compare what's the heart attack
Are even some pretty striking evidence that this back and forth switching can harm people's health.
It definitely can. Think about it this way: jet lag off a plane, right? When you've had a long flight and you're exhausted, 3 hours. Let's say you're going from New York City to California. That's on the opposite side of the United States, right? So you get jet lag. When you're losing 3 hours of sleep, the time difference, 3 hours of time difference is jet lag. So, yes, 3 hours is way different than just an hour forward or backward of the clock for daylight savings. But you get the idea of jet lag and time differences. So, yes, it definitely makes you even sleepier, exhausted, which makes your body unable to properly function. And
what's the heart attack data on the Monday after the spring forward time change in places that do have the change and then places that don't have the change, like Arizona. And they don't have a spike in heart attacks on that Monday morning after in Arizona. They do everywhere else. And so it becomes really pretty clear evidence. It's really just kind of a glitch in the way that we operate the clocks, and it's a deadly glitch.
Yates became something of a go-to expert, testifying before different state legislatures.
My name is Scott Yates.
Even trying an unsuccessful run for Congress in his home state of Colorado, all focused on this issue of stopping the biannual change. It's an idea that is gaining popularity. In the last few years, 19 states have passed legislation to do away with the switch and make daylight saving time permanent.
2 years ago,
federal law
they were trying to figure this out.
doing that. But then earlier this year in the Senate, the bipartisan Sunshine
Yeah,
Protection
and now
Act was
2024.
introduced. It would make daylight saving time permanent starting next year. So daylight.
Okay, so then they were trying to make it permanent then. But 2024, Trump says Republicans will try to end daylight savings time.
Saving time brings sunshine, smiles, and savings.
I've watched sporting events be called, youth sporting events be called in the middle or near the end of the game before it's actually concluded because there's not enough lights.
Right. It gets too dark. That's the same with me. That's the issue that I have now. I love doing things outside, right? So after work or after I do something between or after 4, it's like I'm trying to rush to the park. I'm trying to rush to the park so I can play. And time is limited now because they're not going to turn the whole entire park lights on just for little old me or just for a small group or gathering who want to play outside or have a sports game or something. So yeah, your time is limited outside because daylight savings.
Any parent who's worked so hard to get a newborn or a toddler on a regular sleeping schedule understands the absolute chaos changing our clocks creates, and for no good reason.
The Senate unanimously passed the bill in March, but it's stuck in the House over debate on which time, daylight or standard, is the one to lock our clocks on. So if there is this groundswell to stop switching, why do we even do it in the first place? Where did this idea come from that I remember being told as a kid that this was to help the farmers of America?
That is one of the myths that I don't understand about because it's 100% wrong. 100% wrong.
But it's stuck in the House over debate on which time, daylight or standard, is the one to lock our clocks on. So if there is this groundswell to stop switching, why do we even do it in the first place?
That's a good question.
Where did this idea come from that I remember being told as a kid that this was to help the farmers of America?
I did hear that
That
before.
is one of the myths that I don't understand about because it's 100% wrong. 100% wrong.
David Perrow has written 2 books
Then
on the
what? Where
strange
did it
history
come
of
from?
why we change our clocks. He also worked in the Federal Department of Transportation, helping craft this policy in the 1970s. During World War I, the Germans changed their clocks to preserve energy during the summer months.
I have heard
In
that too.
1918, the U.S. tried the
Energy
same and kept it up through
consumption
both world wars.
Not
preservation.
only, by the way, did it save energy, but it did other things, like it left an extra hour in the evening where people can come home from work and tend to victory gardens, which would grow some food extra for the war effort.
For the next few decades, cities and states could choose what to do with their own clocks. But in the 60s, President Johnson signed a law setting specific dates for daylight saving time. It said if states chose to do it, it had to be statewide.
In the short term, we face a problem.
Then in the early 70s, trying to ease an energy crisis, President Nixon signed a law which locked the clocks on daylight saving
Nixon.
time year round. But pretty soon, Americans saw the darker side to daylight saving.
Richard Nixon was very, very prominent. Richard Nixon, his name comes up in so many environmental situations and topics. Okay, let me just make that clear first.
Which adds more sunshine to the evening, but takes it from the morning.
What happened was it seemed okay until the middle of winter in 1974 when it
Wait,
became
what did he say?
But takes it from the
Okay, I'm sorry about that. My camera died and I have to redo it from where we left off. Okay, so basically where we were here.
that I don't understand about because it's 100% wrong. 100% wrong.
David Perrow has written 2 books on the strange history of why we change our clocks. He also worked in the Federal Department of Transportation, helping craft this policy in the 1970s. During World War I, the Germans changed their clocks to preserve energy during the summer months.
Right,
And
I
in
remember hearing that.
1918, the U.S. tried the same and kept it up through both world wars.
Not only, by the way, did it save energy, but it did other things, like it left an extra hour in the evening where people can come home from work and tend to victory gardens, which would grow some food extra for the. Not only, by the way, did it save energy, but it did other things, like it left an extra hour in the evening where people can come home from work and tend to victory gardens, which would grow some food extra for the war effort.
From an environmental standpoint, I do agree that it is probably very beneficial to be able to turn off lights. I'm so confused. Daylight savings always confuses me. It's like, okay, so how does it save energy? Hold on, I'm thinking.
Then in the early 70s, trying to ease an energy crisis, President Nixon signed a law which locked the clocks on daylight saving time year round. But pretty soon, Americans saw the darker side to daylight saving,
And what is
which
that?
adds more sunshine to the evening, but takes it from the morning.
What happened was it
Yeah.
seemed okay until the middle of winter in 1974.
Because here's the thing. You know, daylight savings confuses me in terms of energy consumption. I could see why it could save energy, but it confuses me, right? So daylight savings time is intended to conserve energy by just extending the amount of daylight in the evening when people are awake. So this basically allows us to spend more time outside, and then it's already light time, so we're reducing the need for light in appliances and turning on and off light switches and such. Okay, I get that. So then we don't want it then. We don't want daylight savings time? See, this is confusing. I just don't, okay, to make it so simple, I don't want to lose sleep. I want to gain an hour of sleep, and I want to be able to enjoy my day outside, right? After collecting my thoughts about daylight savings, this is it, right? Daylight savings time shifts the clock forward in the spring and back in the fall. So that means clocks clocks are turned back when daylight savings time ends. Meaning, the next time daylight savings begins is March 9th, 2025. So we have to turn the clocks forward 1 hour, which means we're losing an hour of sleep. But what the administration wants to do, they want to cancel daylight savings. So what administration wants to do is cancel daylight savings, as in they want to stop having to push the clocks forward so that we, one, don't lose an hour of sleep. The days will be lighter, longer. There'll be more light outside for a longer period of time. Did I say that correctly? It's just so confusing. Daylight savings time. So when we're saying daylight saving time, we're saying that we're saving daylight. Oh, think of it that way. Okay. So when daylight saving time ends, that means we are no longer saving daylight. Oh my gosh. Here we go. We just see, this is what we're here for. Sometimes things are a little bit difficult with words, but we could work together, right? So basically, daylight savings, simply put, right? We're saving daylight. Daylight savings time is the practice of moving clocks forward 1 hour. So we're saving daylight in the fall because we are moving the clocks back an hour, which means we're saving daylight. We have more light outside to go outside, play outside without having to turn on the field lights at the soccer field, right? But then in the spring, we are moving the clock forward 1 hour, which means we are no longer in daylight savings and we have no longer saved daylight. See, it's confusing if you never really like evaluate what that actually means. And what Congress or administration is trying to do, like Trump and all of them, they're trying to cancel daylight saving so that we don't have to keep moving the clocks forward and backward, because it is a hassle. I think it's a hassle. You know, we're losing sleep here and there. Our routines are out of whack. You know, we have places to go to in the morning, and it's just a hassle to me. So let's just continue what we're listening to right now.
But it became very unpopular very quickly. People really disliked the winter daylight saving time. They disliked having to
I
get
like to
up
go
in the pitch
outside.
dark, having to
Exactly.
commute to work. And
Waking up in the morning and it's still dark outside, that just makes me feel a little bit, it just feels ominous to me. When you get up that early and then it's still dark, I'm like, where did I sleep? It's just weird to me.
the dark and having to send their kids to school in the dark.
President Ford then reversed course, and we went back to changing clocks twice a year. Which brings us to today, and this movement to go back to permanent daylight saving.
Oh yeah, and that's another thing too. I remember being in school and I would get on the bus, right? When we switched to daylight savings time, the mornings were darker and because we're moving the clocks forward, right? So the mornings were darker, and every time I would go to my bus stop, it's like so dark and ominous and scary. I'm like, I don't even, this is sleep hour. I should be asleep. But I do find an excuse to sleep on the bus. I did sleep on the bus. I'm not gonna lie. That was amazing. But yeah, that's the thing. I don't think that's, kids don't want to have to go to their bus stop and it's still dark outside. It's time for bed. And then you probably lose energy because you're still trying to be in that sleep mode.
According to one poll earlier this year, nearly 6 in 10 Americans want to ditch the switching. While that could mean longer days in the fall and winter, giving us more light to enjoy the great outdoors, it's partly why the golf industry supports the move. Some health experts say not so fast.
Waking up in the pitch black is not normal.
Exactly.
for
That's what I
our
was saying.
bodies.
Beth Mallow,
Because your sleep cycle is thinking it's still dark time. It's still dark and it's still time for bed. You should be asleep at this time. So even if you're trying to go to school, if you're in college, or if you're trying to go to work, you're still in that sleep stage, I think. I mean, you're not actually asleep, but you feel like you need to be asleep. It just does not, the thought process, you know. You're still asleep.
is a pediatric neurologist at Vanderbilt Medical Center. She says, yes, later sunsets are great, but stealing that morning light can have real detrimental effects.
Now this is where the real stuff comes
Morning
in.
light is key in terms of helping people have a normal, healthy sleep cycle and be able to get to bed at night.
Exactly.
So the light that you're exposed to in the morning can not.
That's why some people, when they wake up, the first thing that they do is open their blinds, because that's activating subconsciously that it's time to wake up. This is the start of the day. And if we're losing that, or if we keep switching back and forth from fall to spring, it just glitches your cycle.
Just have an effect on you in the morning, but it can have an effect 12, 14, 16 hours later on your sleep.
Correct. I wish in an ideal world we could have.
So when you think of a cycle, a sleep cycle, think of it in two. You have to look at it this way, right? You're sleeping, right? Your sleep cycle. From start to end. You start off waking up, you get your 7 or 8 hours of sleep. I usually need 7 to 8 hours. So you start off 7 to 8 hours, and your cycle, if it's broken because you're trying to consider the daylight savings, it's going to shift. And if you're like out of whack with that, you're not going to be able to get your proper sleep.
But if we have to choose where to get our light, where's the most healthy part of the day to get our light, it's actually in the mornings for the reasons I mentioned, because it helps us synchronize our
Synchronize. It's a beautiful word. Yeah.
our bodies and our brains to what's going on in our environment.
So when we're talking about sleep and shifting, because there's a synchronization glitch, right? Because we are still thinking that it's light outside, but our body isn't aware of that. Your hormones fluctuate rhythmically over the course of the day. The stress hormone cortisol typically peaks in the morning, while the sleep hormone melatonin typically peaks in the night. So again, if we're experiencing daylight savings and melatonin peaks in the night, if it's getting darker earlier, then we're going to be more prone to wanting to go to sleep because it's dark outside. Our body and our minds are rhythmically aligned to night and day. When you switch to daylight savings time, mornings are darker because the clock is moving forward. And also, sunrise occurs later in the morning. This means you experience less daylight while gaining more daylight in the evening. We might be wanting to stay up later. And again, our sleep cycle is rhythmically aligned to light and day naturally. So if we keep altering this between spring and fall, those are a few months between each other. We get that, yes. But over the course of years, our sleeps are going to be disrupted. And even if it's not even over a course of years, it's just that spark, right? Just that start and end date of daylight savings. We're still going to experience some type of setback to our sleep. So basically that's the thing too. When you switch to daylight savings time, mornings tend to be darker because the clock was moved forward. So when you switch to daylight savings time, mornings tend to be darker. But then you're gaining more sunlight in the evening, which I like that, but we shouldn't have to turn our clocks forward and back anyway. That's just what I think. Now let's continue with this, okay?
If we have to pick one option only, permanent standard time would be the healthiest option. After his years of studying the issue, David Perrow argues for keeping the current system and helping people manage the transitions better. He says, remember, permanent daylight saving gives you sunnier evenings, but much darker mornings.
Sunnier evenings, but darker mornings. I think I would go towards sunnier evenings because my day has already started. It's basically about to be over, and I still want to go outside. I have enough energy. I want to go outside, and I want to play in the soccer field, or kids want to play at the jungle gym. Kids want to go outside and play, go to their sports tournaments and things like that. And people have practice after their classes and things like that. Not only that, people who like golf, they want to enjoy their day after work. okay? And enjoy the outdoors.
Mornings, for example, in places like New York, Chicago, Dallas, Denver, San Francisco, the sun would rise at 8:30. In places like Detroit, Indianapolis, Minneapolis,
Either way, I'm going to be sleepy in the morning. I'm more so concerned about the evenings having more daylight because after work, when it comes to 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock, it's the end of the day, but I still want to go outside, take a walk, play soccer, go to the basketball court or something. Okay.
Seattle, the sun would rise at 9 a.m. So if the sun is rising at 8:30 or 9,
9
almost
a.m.
everybody is going to work, school in the dark.
My
That's a
sister's
pretty
messed up.
big
She lives in
negative. A lot of
Seattle.
people didn't like, and they didn't like it in 1974.
So while Congress and state legislatures debate the issue, we can all enjoy a couple more of these long autumn evenings before Sunday morning when we fall back into darkness.
Whoa. That ending though, fall back into darkness. Yeah, I mean, it's not that bad, but I don't like it. I don't like it at all. So that's why, administration right now, Trump and them are trying to cancel it and completely. And I actually don't disagree with that. I don't disagree with that because it just is a mess to me. Now, somebody brought up a point about the wildlife in daylight savings. I don't actually think wildlife or bugs or species are going to be impacted by daylight savings because animals don't have a concept of time like that. They don't have an alarm clock. They don't have mornings to get up to. They're not synchronized like we are. Yes, they know when morning is and they know what season they're in, which is why they're able to migrate and know how to migrate or when to migrate because they're synchronized in that area. But when it comes to mornings, having to get up for work and things like that, and they just don't have that similar type of conscious understanding. And why would they? They're not on a schedule. They don't have places to go. They just do things on their own. I love that for them. So basically, daylight savings time doesn't directly affect animals' behavior. There may be some type of other connection. It can indirectly impact wildlife. For example, people going to work earlier, that might interrupt travel time for certain wildlife, particularly, dawn and dusk when animals are most active. If they're most active at that time, but then we switch to a time at that exact time that they're active, we might disrupt their, hunting patterns or hunting times, because we're in the way. There could be an increase in wildlife, let's say vehicles crashing into them or human interruption in that way. But another thing too, animals, wildlife, they rely on the natural cues like the sunlight to regulate their routines. So the clock change isn't going to affect them because the sunlight is going to get lit whenever it is. The clocks do not control the light. We are controlling time on our clocks for the light. So light is never going to be controlled. We have no control over that. So that's why wildlife, they don't have any concept of time like a clock because they're relying on the sunlight, which has its own tick tock to it.